What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of ParaTruth Reborn. This is a pre-recorded show on 107.7 FM New Orleans and the United Public Radio Network. My name is Justin.
And I'm Eric.
And as you can tell, I'm doing a little bit better compared to last week.
It sounds better for sure.
Still not over the hump yet. Tell you what, man, if you guys get sick, bulk up on vitamin C and everything else this year, because according to the doctors, I didn't have anything except for the common cold, but I could have been having some weird variant of influenza that they can't even detect. So just FYI.
I mean, that's interesting because everyone that I keep running across keeps getting sick too. My parents are both sick right now too with some sort of flu, upper, sinus type thing.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, one thing, what's funny, you said get up on the vitamin C. I've heard so many people not this past year, but 2024. So I guess technically this past year, who said you taking vitamin C while you're sick doesn't do anything. It's only effective if you take it before getting sick. So I guess this whole idea of taking vitamin C while being sick is actually an old wives' tale and doesn't technically work. But
actually, in order for you to get or ingest enough vitamin C, you have to also take vitamin D. So that's part of it too. You're probably right. It probably doesn't do much good if you're already sick, but if you're not taking vitamin D with vitamin C, your body cannot absorb it as much, and therefore it's not as effective too. But if you're not sick, bulk up on vitamin C and vitamin D now. And with it being winter, it's probably not a bad idea to have vitamin D and vitamin B12 too. So,
right.
But today we've got a very good episode for you guys because it's something near and dear to both Eric and I's heart, and that is getting started in ghost hunting. We've done Ghost Hunting 101 before on the old ParaTruth. We're revamping it because there's so much new technology compared to when we did it the last time. But before we get into all of the stuff that we've got on our list, I wanted to start out with why we got started in paranormal investigation. So I'll have you start why you decided you wanted to do paranormal investigation.
Yeah. I think for me, let's face it, I've always been interested in the paranormal. Like, there's always something supernatural happening within my home. I know I've talked about this on this show before in this particular iteration, but also iterations past. So growing up, I was always very interested in the paranormal, the supernatural, and the unexplained. But I would say that right around 2005, was really, it kicked my interest into high gear when a little known show on the CW premiered called Supernatural. So, naturally back then, a lot of people got into the paranormal field because of Supernatural. They were drawn to it and wanted to know more and be a part of this
because of a fictional
thing.
Story.
Because of a fictional story. It's amazing what fiction will do, But yeah, so that was 2005. Fast forward 6, 7 to 2008 when we actually started podcasting. We had already decided that we were going to start investigating. I don't think we've actually done any investigations prior to starting the
No,
podcast.
I think we launched both at the same time.
Yeah. And I know for me, it was something that was kind of an adventure in the beginning. Just going out into these spooky places, seeing if I can make contact with something from the other side or someone. And that kind of just developed over time because originally it was very selfish. I think it was for fun. It was just to go out and do something, very ritualistic in many ways. And I don't mean ritualistic as in like a cultish, but superstitious. Let's go with that word. More superstitious, because we would take various items with us aside from like just gemstones. And I remember you bought us the St. Christopher's medallions to wear on investigations, but we'd also take a container of salt with us and sprinkle it around my car to make sure spirits couldn't get in and follow us home. And would sometimes take that into whatever place we were going as well, just in case. But I think as the days went on and the months, it kind of developed into not only wanting to better understand it, but then to help people out as well, because when we started doing the investigations with our team, a team that we created called Night Stalkers Paranormal Society, we actually started reaching out and helping individuals. We helped someone in one of their homes before as a team. We did a couple businesses as a team, and just seeing the way that our results and things that we found helped those individuals was really satisfying in a number of different ways. But it also told us that you can investigate and have this experience, this adventure, while still being able to help people who are living, who are dealing with things that maybe they don't understand themselves and are too scared to even kind of tamper with without someone there who's knowledgeable of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, and yeah, basically same thing for me. I think actually Ghost Hunters influenced me more than Supernatural. Not that I didn't love Supernatural, but I think really what got us started in talking about the paranormal is Supernatural, but actually wanting to do the ghost hunting and stuff was actually Ghost Hunters. And I think at that time Paranormal State was going, and what's Zach Bagans?
Ghost Adventures.
Ghost Adventures. Was that going at the same time too? I don't even remember
Yes.
now.
Mhm.
I don't think it went back that far, but yeah, and that's kind of why I wanted to bring it up, because we're going to kind of go over what your motivation is for wanting to become a paranormal investigator, because I'd say probably a quarter of people that go into paranormal investigations are going into it to become ghost celebrity famous, paranormal celebrity famous. And there's nothing wrong with that per se, but you really have to question your motives, because really it's should be a buildup, not you're just wanting to get famous. So yeah, if you're wanting to get famous, seriously reconsider before you even get started, because I don't know. Do we know anybody in the paranormal investigative community out of our circle that have become paranormal celebrities?
Well, no, there's very few. I mean, I would argue that even the individuals who go to many of the individuals who go and set up their own booths at conventions aren't technically celebrities either. Most
Right.
of these people we don't know. We've gone to how many conventions and we're like, who's this? What's this
Right.
paranormal society? Who's that? They kind of try to make a name for themselves, which is fine too if they're just trying to, garner interest in what they're doing, if they're really trying to help people. But when you consider the amount of paranormal celebrities out there, and if you can name if you can name off even 10 people right off the bat, that's impressive. But highly doubt that you're going to be able to do that right off the bat. So roughly like 99% of individuals who get into ghost hunting, investigating ghosts, only about 1% actually make it somewhat famous. There's the few who are obviously on TV all the time. We mentioned it already. Ghost Adventures, you got Ghost Hunters, you got the Ghost Brothers, individuals like that. Paranormal State was at one point, actually the guy, I forget his name, the leader of that, the main guy who headed Paranormal State.
Yeah, I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
He still does paranormal stuff. He does a lot of like talk show stuff.
Wasn't he locked up though? Because of something?
I don't think so. He used to be. He was a former FBI agent
for Paranormal State.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Paranormal State was the college kids.
College kids,
Pennsylvania State kids.
I don't recall.
But on top of that, a lot of the Ghost Brothers, I don't know if they had a YouTube channel before they got onto actual TV, but a lot of these people have started YouTube channels before they have transitioned into being on Sci-Fi or wherever, A&E.
Well, I mean, nowadays they also have, like, a lot of these production companies will put people out there to I'm sorry, a lot of these companies will allow people to submit TV shows and things like that. or at least ideas, and they'll bring people
Ideas,
in that way.
pitches, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just like the paranormal state, and yes, you're right there, college. The one dude is indeed or was indeed had what did he move on? He moved on to another show. I forget what
I
it
thought
was.
you
But
went to prison for a little bit though
yeah, I see it right
too.
here. It does say he went to prison in 2016, it looks like. I guess I'll click on it and find out
Well,
what it was.
I hadn't even heard that he got onto a different show, so that's kind of interesting too.
Looks like misdemeanor charge of theft, stolen property. That's it.
Yeah, it's ringing a bell now, but yeah, I had never realized that he got into another show or
I think
was
so.
wanting
Unless he
to.
just looks the same as the other dude. I don't know.
A lot of them do look the
a lot of these
same.
paranormal folk, they all look the same. They all wear black and dark hair, dark eyes.
But to raise that point about becoming famous, we're not telling you can't become famous. It's just probably not the best option if that's what you're really wanting to get into the paranormal field for. It is important to also get yourself established before you're even considered for a show. And
well, before you continue on with whatever you're about to say, I gotta just mention that I did end up finding who I'm thinking of. And the two guys actually do look very similar. So Paranormal State, you're right. It's the college kids, whatever show that. I mean, I remember the show. They had a book at one point too. I remember we actually tried to get them on the show early on.
Yeah.
The person I'm thinking of is Ben Hansen, who actually had the show Fact or Faked.
Okay.
Paranormal Files. But yeah, I looked it up. I said, why is this confusing to me? And sure enough, they do look very, very, so they could be brothers. It's kind of weird. So that's where my confusion came in. But yeah, now we got that set straight. So back to ghost hunting.
Well, something that really got us going into the paranormal was just personal experiences.
Mm-hmm.
On top of, you were going through a lot of stuff in your house. I don't remember if I was really going through anything. I was just always more curious than anything. So that was, I think, really what sparked us more than anything else. I mean, yeah, we were watching the shows, we were talking about this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if I can be honest, I think the thing that probably sparked us the most was a drunken night in which we decided to make s'more dogs. And
well, that's what sparked the podcast.
But that's what kind of, yeah, that's what really moved it forward, man. It was that night, you know.
But how much stuff had you gone through in both of your houses that you grew up in?
I mean, a lot at that point.
And
a lot at that point.
I think that's kind of why we were so interested in it. Is just getting drunk and eating s'more dogs. Just FYI, folks, if you have ideas when you're drunk, especially when it comes to food, maybe just pass on some of them. to give context, s'more dogs was basically a s'more and a hot dog mixed together. You heat up your marshmallow, stick the hot dog in there, put the 2 graham crackers over the top of it with the chocolate. I think I had 2. I think you didn't even finish 1.
No, I didn't.
But gross. After that second one, it's like, oh yeah, it's starting to get gross. But really, to get into paranormal investigation, it should really start out with a personal experience, a personal interest, and also doing the research before you even get started. You can do paranormal investigations by yourself. You can assemble a team if you like. We'll get into assembling a team in part 2 next week. But me personally, I seriously feel that you should have a personal interest into the paranormal before you're doing investigations.
Well, sure. I mean, I think I mean, you can say that with anything. You know, what obviously you got to have a starting point. You have to have some sort of interest or some sort of reason for stepping in and doing the investigations. Just like you should have a certain idea of what you're getting into when you're starting a job, or you're going to school for something, or you're getting a pet. You know, you have to have some sort of experience or idea of what to expect. And unfortunately, we have heard a number of cases in which people decided just on a whim for fun to go do an investigation, and things don't go very well. Like
Mhm.
they open doors they didn't expect. They end up with hauntings within their homes that last way longer than they should, and some very dark. And I'm not saying that's going to happen to everybody or anybody who doesn't have some sort of idea or experience already to begin with. But it's just something to note. You know, like if you're a college kid who just wants to have fun and like you've never done an investigation, you've never used a Ouija board, you've never asked questions to a potential spirit around you, and you don't know how to protect yourself, you don't know what steps to take. I mean, that could be pretty disastrous. You know, I mean, it's not like you're gonna die from it, but it could get
Right.
pretty scary pretty quick, and it could last a lot longer than you would ever expect.
Yeah. Well, and did you guys had a Ouija board?
Yeah, my mom made us throw it away after it got really hot while we were using it.
And that was at the old house
That's at this house.
or the house. Yeah, the
Yeah,
house
my
that you're in
house.
now.
Yeah. We would use it at like our grandparents' house. So grandma, grandpa, Cancelary. And it was all, it was fine. But one night we were using it in what is now my study or my library room. And I think it was me and both of my sisters were using it. And I forget what the question was or who we were talking to, but it gave us a name. I can't remember what it was. But at one point, the planchette started to heat up, like it started to get hot to like frying pan on a stove hot, and it freaked us out. And yeah, my mom, she threw it away. She said this isn't allowed in the house anymore, which she didn't like the fact that we had it anyway to begin with. But we were kids. She let us dabble, and look what happened. Now I got a podcast about the paranormal, and we're talking to lots and lots of people. So
Yeah, I will say my perception of the Ouija board has changed a lot from when we first started doing everything to today, except for the fact that it should not be being sold as a game geared towards kids. I feel you can use a Ouija board so long as you're being safe, protecting yourself against harm from spiritual attack, and making sure you're following the rules, which is always making sure you're closing the door by saying goodbye, or there's so many different ways that you can do it. But really it's just saying goodbye and making sure that the communication is cut. Can you be 100% sure that that communication is cut? No. So if you're doing it, make sure you know how to protect yourself spiritually.
Yeah. I will say, I want to just put I don't know, not a disclaimer, but just want to say when we say Ouija board, we actually mean spirit board. There are a number of different boards that are not labeled under Ouija. Ouija is a brand,
Right.
technically.
Yeah.
So we just mean spirit boards in general. And Ouija board isn't even the first of its kind. It's actually relatively modern, though, quote unquote Ouija. And it was actually stolen from somebody else and renamed, I believe. We actually had somebody on 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago now, on our original version of ParaTruth, which was ParaTruth Radio. And he actually owns a Ouija board or a spirit board museum in Salem.
Yep.
I met him while I was in Massachusetts at his museum, and he thankfully willingly came onto the show. He knew nothing about us, but I was like, hey, here's our card. We'd love to have you on. And it was actually a really interesting conversation. A lot of really great knowledge on the spirit board and the history of the spirit board, and some really weird happenings about it. And I think we actually, if we don't re-release that episode here at some point in the future, maybe we will just bring him back on to chat with us. But I think it's something you guys would all really enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't hurt to have a refresher. So the other part to this, as far as getting into paranormal investigations, is wanting to help people. Yes, it's great to have a personal interest in the paranormal, but that's really what, at least quote quote unquote ghost hunting is really about, is helping people. Um, the other parts of the paranormal investigation, cryptid investigation and stuff like that, ufology, all that is to really help people too, because there are those people that have had abduction stories, and we've talked about this numerous times, that abduction stories can also be hauntings, or hauntings, I should say, and being misled.
Right.
But wanting to help people is a huge part of this.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, wanting to help people in this case doesn't matter if they're alive or dead, because that's kind of the point.
Right.
So either side is it would be beneficial for the individual who's seeking help.
Something that I think we developed later, after we actually had a team and we're doing more investigations with actual individual clients, compared to just like going to a cemetery or going to the haunted lake that we went to and stuff like that, is prioritizing your investigations. Something in Eric and I think both feel is, if there is a case that's involving children, that should be highest on your list as far as trying to get in there and help.
Right. No, 100%. You definitely have to be aware of which of your clients are most vulnerable in a certain circumstance. Kids are typically, they're very open to paranormal suggestions. If there's something happening, whether it's good or bad, if it's scaring the kid, that fear is only going to increase. It's very rare that they're going to spend time with it and their fear will decrease until they get to a certain age. But because they're so open, so open-minded, you have to consider that if you let them go another week, another 2 weeks without being there to intervene and help, that could cast a very big shadow on them for a very long period, if not the rest of their lives. And yeah, obviously there's a difference if it's like a kid and then, your Aunt Matilda is possessed by whatever, behemoth or something. Right. Obviously you should probably take care of that first or get a friend to go check on the kid. But nonetheless, that's something that we did. When we had one individual who was a kid that was being affected, we actually worked with another paranormal society, which was west. I think it was south. It was south of Cleveland.
Yep.
Monroe Falls. And they were doing a investigation at Ghost Alley, which is a bowling alley that was supposedly haunted. And there were some creepy things there.
Yeah.
By and by that we had witnessed. But a couple blocks from there was a family who had a kid that was witnessing a bunch of things. And sorry, did you see the little blip of light that just went across my screen by chance?
I missed it.
Oh man, that was weird.
If you guys saw it, let us know.
Yeah. I thought it was a cat walking, but they're sound asleep. But yeah, so this kid was seeing something coming out of his ceiling at night, at the corner of his ceiling, and trying to grab him. So,
and it was appearing as a cartoon character.
As a cartoon character, yeah. And those are kind of hard because you have to discern whether or not they're really saying something or if it's just all imagination.
Right.
Honestly, I always believe that when it comes down to it, just pretend they're truly seeing what they claim they're seeing, because it's much safer to just admit and say, okay, there's something here, let's handle it, as opposed to just saying like, oh, it's his imagination, walk away, and then now you're coming back for something much worse down the line.
Right. If I remember right, I don't think we really got any evidence at that house either.
No, we didn't get any evidence at all whatsoever. I mean, the parents were adamant that he was constantly up at night crying. And at one point, the kid while we were doing our investigation, the kid came into the room, which he wasn't even supposed to be upstairs. So I don't know why he was up there. But he came into the room and started like conversing with us and then interacting with whatever this entity was and started crying. And we're like, what is happening? Because there's like nothing there that we can see either through our own eyes, the camera, the EMF detectors, the EVPs, digital voice recorders, all that stuff was just blank, but this kid's reacting. So it's like, that could very well be imaginative and maybe just seeking attention. But again, better to just stay on the side of, okay, maybe he's actually witnessing it. Let's figure out how we can help this.
Right. Well, and so that kind of gets us into what can you use on the cheap or on the fly that can work for basic equipment.
Mhm.
And the first thing I wanted to include in this, just because I think as a society we don't rely on these as much as we used to when we were not so reliant on technology, and that is our five senses. You know, everybody knows what you see, smell, feel, taste, and hear. Is it great for proving that there's paranormal activity by just using your five senses? Not necessarily, because it's more of a documentation process for using your senses. You know, and I have no doubt you'll agree with me on this. Coinciding different pieces of evidence is really what's going to affect if you can say, yes, there is something here. Paranormal, we're not sure, but there's definitely something going on.
Right. I mean, evidence is it's a strong supporter of the things that you're feeling. You know, if you're feeling uneasy, if you're feeling cold, if you're feeling ill in some way, and then you have physical evidence, like hard evidence, either through video, audio, or something entirely different, that's going to help you to consider whether or not the place is really haunted, or if it's maybe high EMF that you're feeling that maybe people don't know about. You know, but you're right. The one thing that people I think tend to do is rely less on their five senses and focus more on the instruments that have been developed over the last 20 odd years now, that are constantly taken in. You know, people go in, shut off their mind, allow the instruments to do their own thing, and then like, okay, cool, that just happened. That voice came through, and then they just let it go. Well, you have to consider whether that voice is really a ghost, or was it, you know, it's a spirit box. Okay. Was it just a channel that was blipping in and it just happened to be coincidental that it said what it said? Absolutely. There is that possibility. But also, like, our senses help guide us through the investigation, right? Like, if you're, especially if you have like a sixth sense, whether that's a sensitivity towards energies or spirits, or maybe you're psychic in some way or something like that, that's going to help guide you along your investigations as to where to go, where to focus your time and energy when investigating, and where you can use the instrumentation to help pick up or help to assist you in making contact and learning about what's happening there. One thing that I always find very interesting, and I've shared this a couple of times, not on this iteration of the show, but I've shared it in the past. My eyes are one thing that I love using in the dark. I learned many years ago at this point that the way that our eyes are made up, the majority of the cones of our eyes, they point forward. It's what allows us to see in daylight, right? It gives us definition, it gives us clarity, it gives us color. However, as we move to the corners of our eyes, our peripheral, those cones turn into rods, and the rods are actually they're not as detailed. You can't see things as clearly. That's why when you're looking straight, you see so much blur around the corner of your eyes, right?
Right.
But those rods pick up low light a lot better than the cones do. So if you train yourself, and I did this, I trained myself, I use it all the time. If you can train yourself to walk around in the dark using only your peripheral vision to see, you'll be amazed at the things that you can pick up on that you would never notice if you were just looking straight. You can pick up on shadows, pick up on details that you didn't know were there. I use it regularly now because, as you guys all know, you've seen them, they make their appearance weekly. I got 2 black cats, and walking around a dark house with black cats, I mean, there's a lot of stepping on and getting bitten. Okay. So I got to use peripheral vision to try to find the darkest places because they are literally darker than the shadows in my house. So that's the only way I could spot them before there's a big ruckus and I got bleeding legs. So, but it's super beneficial because, you know, when we're in investigations, we're looking for those shadows. We're looking for little movements that we normally wouldn't see if we were looking directly at them, and things that maybe the cameras wouldn't even pick up. So that's like one thing. Your nose, obviously, you smell certain scents that maybe shouldn't be there. Tobacco, right? We hear a lot
Well,
about
just
smoke.
before you move
Yeah.
on, they do say in the very outer edge of our vision, you can see into the infrared and ultraviolet. It's very rare, but supposedly the human eye can see into it on the very outer edge.
Yes, and I agree. Because I recall reading that at one point. We actually, on another episode that we had done a long time ago, this wasn't ghost hunting 101. It was something else entirely different. But we came across an article that did say that was true. But I made the mistake of telling somebody who isn't in the paranormal community, who knows nothing about ghosts, about that whole thing about infrared. It was right at the beginning of a movie I started working on this past summer. And let me tell you, for the next 44 days, all I heard every day were jokes about my infrared vision because I'm superhuman and this and that. So I had to look it up. And I cannot find a single thing online anywhere that says that our eyes have any infrared capabilities at all. So I don't know where we found this. I don't know if it's just
Maybe it's not infrared, but ultraviolet. We can. It's very hard, and it's so rare that it probably doesn't exist in most humans now. But I'll have to do some more research for next episode. Yeah, because it was and I believe it was a science.
It was a science article that you and I both came across, I think, and then compare, because we usually always compare notes before these episodes. But yeah, we both came across it and it was really fascinating. That's why we shared it. But looking back, I tried to find that article again. I tried to find anything about it, and all it says is, no, the rod's in the eyes. It just sees better low light. That's the scientific explanation. Period. Got it. Mark it. Exclamation point. Leave it.
Maybe we went into a different timeline or some type of Mandela
effect. I didn't want to say Mandela effect because I say it so often lately because crap has just been so bad, which, by the way, how's you guys' 2025 going? Can I submit a return to sender? Because I'm done already. I'm ready to go back to 2024, which also sucked really bad, but I don't know. Maybe we'll just go to 2020 where it all began and hope it goes differently.
Or jump to 2026 and see.
I'm scared. It only gets worse, dude. Since 2020, it's only gotten worse every year up to the last 5 years. I don't want to know what happened in 20. I mean, for all we know, we may not even exist in 2026.
Well, depending on your vision of time, technically, we probably don't exist in 2026 right now.
No, I mean, well, you know what I mean.
There are people that say time is not linear as we see it, but cyclical. And in that fact, we do exist in 2026. But
look, I'm just saying there's some timeline in this weird universe where my cats are sitting here with your dogs talking about the paranormal, and you and I are at their feet scratching and begging for treats. Okay? It's weird and it's creepy and it's kind of interesting. If that's in 2026, I don't want to go. Okay? I don't know what to expect anymore.
But anyways, getting back to smell. I'm trying to remember, and I wanted to kind of reference some of our personal experiences. I don't know if I've ever had
regarding scent.
Yeah, or any of the senses. Yeah, I don't remember if I've ever had a weird smell. Oh, I take that back. Cigar or cigarette smoke.
Mm-hmm. That's the most common, typically.
But other than that, yeah, I don't remember scent.
Yeah, no. Smoke is one that we come across a lot. I think a lot of individuals come across it a lot, and I think it's because, smoke coming from tobacco. And this is a theory. This is a theory that I'm literally just coming up with on the top of my head. So I don't know. Maybe you guys agree or don't agree. But because tobacco is of the earth initially, it maybe has a higher a vibration or frequency, and therefore when it's smoked, it can linger with the spirits longer in the afterlife, and that's why we get that scent first, as opposed to something like perfume, which is artificial in most cases and doesn't have as high of a frequency and therefore diminishes. Even though we can still smell perfumes on occasion in paranormal investigations, they tend to be much more rare, and so on and so forth down the line with all the other different types of scents that we could potentially smell. I know people have said they smelled blood before during investigating a place where a murder happened. They say gun smoke is another one that they smelled. Of course, perfume, of course, tobacco smoke. Those are the most common. Someone told me this is off subject a bit, but someone said the other day, or I read something the other day, a perfume in particular, which whole nother topic altogether. Why am I looking at perfume as opposed to cologne? That's a whole nother thing. I explain it to you later, Justin. But I came across this one that said the scent of lightning. That's like, what in the world is the scent of lightning?
So ozone.
I mean, I suppose
sulfury
it's
kind
the
of
same thing you get. I don't know, sulfur. Like, I feel like it's more like the rain scent, the fresh rain. Is that they're referring to, but I don't know. It was weird. It was a weird thing. I was like, I mean, I guess I'd not been close enough to lightning. So,
well, I just saw it was a meme, but I believe it was truthful that there was a guy in the early 1900s that was struck by lightning 3 times, and then his headstone was struck by lightning as well.
Hey, man. When
so a human can be a lightning rod.
Yeah.
Too.
My bet is whoever says that they know the scent of lightning are the ones who were struck and are just smelling their flesh burning off their body, and they think it's lightning.
The other part to the cigarette and cigar smoke too is it was very much more common back in the past to be smoking, especially like early 1900s, going into the 40s, 50s.
Dude, 15, 20 years from now, people are going to be smelling vape smoke when you're doing investigations. So
we've gone over smell, we've gone over sight. I've been touched quite a few times on paranormal investigations. Have either of us been scratched or slapped or anything like that?
I've been groped.
Well, the one
not
particular
in a
instance I
sexual
felt
way,
like
just
grope.
Yeah, it was my hair. It is during the demonic oppression. I call it an era at this point because this life is just full of weirdness anymore. But yeah, back in the demonic oppression era of my life, yeah, there were a couple of nights where something would sit on my bed and then touch my hair as if like brushing my hair was much longer back then, so it would brush my hair to the side. You would think that's like a gentle, like this is a good spirit. No, friends, it was not. Let me tell you, something is touching you in any manner whatsoever is probably not good. Whether it's your head, your feet, or God knows where else, you should take care of it. Because there are still boundaries in both life and death. So
boundaries, yeah. I've plenty of spirits will
like I'm just saying
not go by those boundaries.
I've legit got a bubble at all times, and the only thing that always breaks it are spirits. Don't know why.
Or your cousin jumping into your lap.
That's different. In some ways worse, but it's
I don't think either of us have ever tasted anything.
I'm not even sure what. Like I don't want to know.
Yeah.
I'd rather. Can you? I don't know. Like I never want to be in a situation where somebody walks through a door like, oh, you taste that ectoplasm? Well, it's in my mouth. Like what? What is it? I don't. I'll just pull open the liquor bottle and start drinking right there and then and leave. Like, time to go. This is weird.
Going back to the site, I did forget. You did see an orb with your eyes, but did not catch it on camera.
Yes, at Dahmer's house.
Yep.
Actually, a couple of different places, but yeah, Dahmer's house was one of them. There was
That was a
light
gold
anomaly.
orb, I believe.
Yes, it was a gold orb in his bedroom. What was his childhood's bedroom?
Yeah.
And it was right before I received probably our best EVP ever.
That's right.
And it was so, I still have it saved here on my system, so maybe I'll play that next week for you guys. But I was just asking normal questions, like you normally do. Try to be nice, ask questions. Hi, my name is Eric, and that's what I did. I said, "Hi, my name is Eric. What's your name?" And all you hear, like just a couple seconds after that, is Eric. It was so creepy, and I listened to it so many times that night after we got home and did the reviews. But yeah, we've played that for everybody who was interested in hearing, and it's just incredible. Like, it's one of my favorite EVPs I think I've ever caught.
Yeah. Well, and I would say that's probably as close to a Class A EVP.
I mean, it was clear. Like, there was no questioning it. There are individuals that we shared it with without telling them any reference to giving them any idea whatsoever what they're going to hear, and they would boom like that, pick it up. Like, wow, so cool.
And then the last thing is hearing, and I'm pretty sure we've both heard things in different investigations, but it was after the Jeffrey Dahmer investigation that I heard probably the clearest I've ever heard a spirit talk to me. I was feeling like there was something still with me, and I told it, you're not allowed to come back. You're come in my car. You're not allowed to come back to me, or come back to my apartment with me. You need to leave right now. And very, very low, deep voice said, "Goodbye, Justin." And the feeling left.
Yeah. And that's horrifying. And I can imagine how hard it is when you hear voices in your head on the regular to begin with, and trying to differentiate what's you and what's the spirits. Was that also after Dahmer as well, or was that after the?
I brought you home and was getting ready to go back to my apartment, and something was just felt weird, and I don't remember I don't think you had anything after Dahmer's house. So that one I really remember, and then I clear as day remember I was having a really hard time, and I don't know if I reached out, but I heard our grandfather say everything's going to be okay. And earlier that day I had heard the frickin' polka music that he would always play, and it was in an apartment, so yeah, it could have been from another apartment, but I would go outside, didn't hear it outside, went into the hallway, couldn't hear it in the hallway. It was just in the apartment. So those are the two that jump out to me. I don't remember, and it's been so long since we've talked about, if you've heard anything on investigations. I know you've heard stuff in your house during your demonic oppression era, as you've put it.
I like that. I like the name of that. I'm gonna stick with that. No, nothing during nothing. I don't recall anything that was like a voice phenomena that I heard. Obviously there were a lot of noises. A ghost alley. There was we were asking questions, me and this one other investigator. Her name was Erin. She and I were down in the basement doing an investigation, and right as we asked a couple questions and paused, there was this huge bang from another room behind us, which was in the kitchen. It sounded like the fridge, like someone hitting a steel door of one of those industrial sized fridges. And we both took off, not running away, we ran towards it. That's the one thing a lot of people, you see all these people on TV, they run away first and then go back. Well, that time it's probably too late. We both just froze and then split in two different directions to try to cut off whatever it was. Like if I had that on tape, that would be the main thing. This is instructional video on how to investigate. Hear a noise?
I was going to say,
go get it.
Another decision to make as a paranormal investigator. Yeah. Are you going to run away from the bad noises, or are you going to run towards them?
Tell you, are you going to be a Velma and a Fred, or are you going to be a Scooby and a Shaggy? I'm just Only
good
one gets you
reference,
results,
actually.
man. Only one gets you results.
Very good reference. um, but it, that is why I want to bring it up, is because a lot of people want to go buy all the expensive equipment and be ready for all this evidence. And truthfully, your five senses give you more evidence than you actually realize.
Yeah.
And on top of that, starting out, a lot of this equipment is super expensive. And Eric can attest to this. We just got a piece of equipment that we've wanted for years, and it was out of our grasp. Probably out of our grasp when we bought it, but it's something we've never used, and that's a full spectrum camera. We'll get into that next week, and I'll show you guys some video and what it actually looks like. But you don't need to go buy all of this stuff. I think we made that. No, I guess we didn't make that mistake. We just got the EMF detectors, the digital recorders, and stuff like that.
I think in total I spent like 20, 25 bucks back then. I was, a digital voice recorder and an EMF detector for 25 bucks total. And I didn't buy them together. They were, two separate things. That's nearly unheard
That
of
was
today.
expensive back
That's like
then.
$100 nowadays. You can get in those two things. But yeah, that's all we got. And personally, I think if you're just getting into investigating, that's your best route. Either A, to go in just with your own five senses, or to just get like an EMF detector and a digital voice recorder, and we'll bring this up in a little bit, your phone is a great tool nowadays, depending on what you believe regarding the cell phone.
Right.
But it's always best to buy as minimal as possible in the beginning, because you might go out and do 1, 2, maybe 3 investigations and then get bored and be like,
Yeah.
well, now I just spent $500 on equipment and I'm never going to use it anymore.
Right.
I know, let me sell it. People ain't going to buy it. I mean,
unless
most
they want to
likely,
get into paranormal investigation.
it's hard to sell that kind of stuff these days, secondhand. So, the especially nowadays, just with the price hike on everything, things are expensive.
Something that we had never used, but I have seen other people use it, is baby powder, flour, something where there is going to be an easy way for an impression to be left, whether that's a print, a brush of some kind, a line, and stuff like that. We never use it, mostly because we didn't want to have to clean up after ourselves after we left.
Facts. Salt just washes away. Not baby powder.
And that kind of goes into stuff that we have done. We have used salt to circle around the car or go put it against windowsills and door frames and stuff like that. There's this whole speculation if salt even works or not.
It's true.
So use it at your own discretion. Of course.
Again, like the idea of salt, and even with like pepper and things like that, any kitchen ingredients in particular, there's a lot of old wives' tales, a lot of legends or myths,
right?
Such as like, why do we throw a pinch of salt over our shoulder? Does it really do anything? Probably not.
Right.
But it's something that a lot of people used to do back in the day, and it kind of stuck. And so a lot of those type of things, they've grown. That's why I called them superstitions at the beginning of the show, because there's an individual, or not, there's two people who at least used to do a show together, Kindred Spirits. I don't know if they still have I don't know if Kindred Spirits is still around, or if they
haven't searched ways. I don't know.
They were on just a couple years ago, so I don't know. I haven't watched in a while. But Kindred, the folks from Kindred Spirits TV show, they actually don't wear any jewelry for protection. There's no gems, no stones, no metals. They believe that using those things forces you to rely on those things when you're investigating, and therefore to not have them on you at some point would leave you particularly vulnerable. And so it's better to not wear those things and just be strong in and of yourself, in the spirit, to protect yourself, because you're always going to be with yourself. You're always going to be you, with or without the jewelry. So why not just do it without the jewelry? And again, that can go back to superstition. Justin, he had got us the St. Christopher's medallions, which have for many, 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 many years been believed to bring luck and protection for individuals, or especially spiritual protection. another one is like obsidian. I used to wear obsidian a lot, an obsidian necklace, which I still, I vibe with obsidian. There's an energy to it that just I sync with, and so I'll put it on with them like when I'm like super anxious or stressed. But typically, I don't wear it as much anymore if I'm out investigating, because even though, you know, the thing with obsidian is it doesn't push energies away; it absorbs energies. So basically, it would absorb negative energy, and then you bring that negative energy into your house, and it's locked
Right.
in this little piece of obsidian, and you got to cleanse it. And there's this whole ritual thing where you got to do that, whether you're using moonlight or sunlight or water or another crystal,
Right.
like
Any intention to cleanse something.
yeah, it's more work, but nonetheless, I mean, again, you do you, which you believe. These are just suggestions or ideas. Use them, don't use them.
Right. Well, yeah, and that's the same for a lot of crystals. A lot of them absorb compared to repel. So you definitely have to watch what you're doing with any type of equipment, or I guess we can call the crystals equipment.
Yeah.
Is make sure, first off, investigate what the properties are. Secondly, realize that whether it repels or absorbs, you're going to have to cleanse it, because cleansing the crystals is just part of the ritual to use them too.
Mm-hmm.
So something that I have not had much luck yet, and mostly because I haven't used them a whole lot yet, is these pieces of equipment right here. And that's a dowsing rod. As you can see, they very easily move. So relying on them may not be the best, because I could say, oh, well, cross the rods to say yes, and all I gotta do is little movement, and there they go, right there.
See, that bothers me so much. Like the fact that how many people use those, like, oh, there's something here. I'm like, bro, you're walking. Like you're not even moving, and they're moving. Like,
well, a lot of the people that I watch are stagnant. They're keeping, see how hard it is to me even keep it from not moving. They stay steady, and I've watched them where the rods are not moving at all, except for when they're asking questions.
mm-hmm.
It is, this is weird. I've never seen it move so quickly like that. But it is a art, but as easily as these move, yeah, can you 100% count on them? Some people swear by them. But again, just like I mentioned with the sixth senses, you have to correlate evidence. So if you're getting yes and no on here, you're running an EVP session, or running an EVP session even in another room, and get an answer to a question that you didn't even ask.
Mm-hmm.
You have to compile all of that together.
Or
Now,
consider like REM pods or something like that picks up on EMF energies. Because if those are moving and then the REM pod is going off, well, now
or
there's
your
two things right
EMF
there that are
detector.
going off. Right.
These are made of copper. I think these costed me $10. So relatively inexpensive.
I could have made those for $2 if you wanted.
Well, Shelly could have probably made them for me for nothing, because we have copper downstairs at the shop. But very, very simple equipment and very non-expensive equipment if you wanted to start trying some stuff out. Again, maybe don't rely on them 100%. They are very, very loose, and you have to have like no tremors in your hand at all. So if you have the shakes, maybe dowsing rods are not the best piece of equipment. But
for sure.
Something that I feel that I want to start practicing more is with these, just to see what type of responses we get. And as I said, if you can correlate them, even better. But I have this little case that is kind of a pain in the butt to get them in.
That's because they're meant for display only. That's why they come with the case. Put them on the shelf.
I don't think anybody that we've talked to, or in the couple of paranormal investigative teams that we've talked to have used dowsing rods.
No,
either.
I mean, there are like two maybe at most, but no one ever used them because they're not reliable. They just scientifically they're not reliable. Yes, there are people who swear by them. Yes, there are plenty of TikTok channels that have people using them all the time. But the simple truth is we can't confirm ourselves as viewers whether or not it's true what they're saying. Like EVPs, they tell everybody the answer, right?
Right.
EMF, when they go off, typically it's giving you the response of what it's feeling. Because most EMF detectors, you can't push them and make them go without putting some sort of EMF near it. So, those are things that devices that definitely work on their own. They're electronic. This
Right.
thing, the dowsing rod, again, like if it's your thing, if it's something you're good at, something you believe in, that's one thing, right? If it can help you guide you on an investigation. For me, I'm not a fan. I can't trust it because there's no hard evidence. I'm seeing people ask questions and they're claiming that these two rods coming together are giving me answers. I'm like, I feel like that's, would that be, that's objective, right?
Subjective.
It is subjective. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the dowsing rod could be very beneficial for some people if you like them, but for others, I think moving on to something a little more commonly used would be better, and that is, of course, the digital voice recorder to collect EVPs, which, of course, Justin has right here for us again. So we'll zoom on that. That's a Philips one. That's a great brand. Really, almost any digital voice recorder that you get will be beneficial. Philips, Sony, Panasonic, all of those are really good. I do personally think that if you were to do EVP sessions, you should use an actual digital voice recorder. It doesn't have to be like old school where there's a tape in it and stuff.
Right.
That would be cool just for nostalgic sake.
Well, some people swear by the tapes too because the tape creates a white noise too.
Mm-hmm. But there are some digital voice recorders that also create white noise. I know I think mine was a Sony. It had a nice little white noise to it as well. I don't think it really matters whether you're going with the tape, like an analog one, or if you're going with the digital. They're both great. They both work well. The nice thing about them is they don't typically pick up frequencies like you would hear on a ghost box or something like that. So instead, whatever you hear is what's literally there in that room with you in most cases, unless there's like a car going by or someone talking outside. Those are things you need to discern when you're investigating.
And also bring it up in the recording. Hey, pounding from the team upstairs or whatever.
Right. I know, like when Justin and I whenever we use the EVPs, we say EVP, electronic voice phenomenon. I'm sure most of you know that. But for those of you who don't, that's what EVP stands for. And it's basically abbreviation also for us in the paranormal field for digital voice recorder. Yeah. I guess we call it DVR, but those exist too. They're for TVs. So we'll just stick with EVP. But basically, like when Justin and I use them, when we're doing playbacks, it is littered with us asking questions and then saying, oh, that was a dog barking. Oh, that's somebody talking.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's the furnace turning on. All these little things to remind us that what we're about to hear next or what we just heard isn't actually paranormal. It's been debunked. And it'll help us streamline the review process, because there have been times where, yeah, there's occasions where you'll miss something where you won't hear or it won't register when it turns on, and you'll listen to it and be like, oh my gosh, that's something. Like that's a ghost. And then you take it to the client and they're like, oh no, I hear that noise all the time. That's just the furnace firing up, or that's the lock gate or whatever, So it's good to always be aware of what's happening around you. And again, that comes back to your five senses, awareness, using your, all of it.
Well, make sure you're paying attention, like listening through all of that stuff too. Because even though you're saying, oh, furnace turned on, there could be something under your voice or paralleling itself to that furnace noise that is an EVP. So make sure you're paying attention. Make sure you can discern and break it apart so that you can offer it as evidence. And if it's so garbled or so mixed into the other sounds, in my personal opinion, you have to throw that away as evidence. But
right. With that said, there is a cheaper option, and that is, of course, to go with your cell phone.
Yeah.
This is something that is a little controversial within the community.
In the paranormal
Um,
investigation. Yeah.
I, I don't know. Like, I kind of like it because it's convenient. It's less that I have to carry on me. It's always there. If I happen to be for whatever reason, if I'm filming a documentary in a morgue around 12 dead people, like that's ever going to happen. It did, folks. It happened, and it was weird. But I was filming a documentary, so I didn't have any, investigative equipment on me, but I did have my cell phone. And the first thing I did was hide away from the set where everyone was filming, and I went and did a little investigation. Didn't catch anything, but that's okay because I at least had something on me, and that's the little item, expensive item in your pockets on a daily basis. You know how often I leave the house thinking, "Oh, I don't want to take that. I don't want to wear this because it cost me so much money." But then I'm walking around with a $1,200 phone in my pocket, like, yeah, it ain't nothing. I'm gonna throw this on the ground. I'm gonna wipe it down with a disinfectant. I'm gonna do whatever I want with it, and it never crosses my mind. It's weird.
Well, and that's why the cell phone isn't necessarily a bad idea, especially if you're not necessarily on a paranormal investigation, but you get a feeling, or randomly your buddy, as you're sitting in his apartment, is like, dude, I've heard stuff in here and it's freaking me out. Not a great piece of equipment to use, but it is in a pinch a good idea to use your phone. Now, if you're doing a paranormal investigation, there are plenty of teams that will not allow their team to have their phones on them. Something that I highly suggest, if you are going to use your phone, make sure your ringer and any other tones are off.
Airplane mode is beneficial.
Yeah. Not that you can't explain that away when you're doing a EVP session, but it just eliminates that factor so that you don't have that sound going on. Something else that can cause issues with is EMF detection. Make sure if you're a team that is using your phones, keep it very far away from a regular EMF meter. And this will help us lead into the EMF detector. But the cell phones, smart watches, smart anything, if it's electronic, it's going to be giving off an EMF. Not necessarily high per se, but it's still going to be giving off more EMF than your base EMF reading.
Right.
So we'll go into the EMF reader. This is my K2 meter. As you can see, it's on the green. That is going to be your base, unless you're going around a house and the base goes up to yellow or the light green there in between the yellow and the dark green. Now, something that I will say is recently, in the past few years, I've never seen Eric react to an EMF detector as much as it was when we did an investigation at my friend's business, because a lot of times we don't get a whole lot of action on the EMF detectors, but it was reacting when we would do or ask questions. And I've never seen Eric so excited in my life on a paranormal investigation.
Up to that point, it was like quite a long time since we did an investigation together.
That too. Yeah.
But I honestly didn't expect to get as much as we did that night, because there was a lot happening that night. Unfortunately, there was like a party happening outside. We didn't know exactly what we were getting into, what we were going to expect here. We knew some of the stories. But yeah, man, like the way that thing kept lighting up, it, like you said, responding intelligently to our questions. If it wasn't intelligent, I probably wouldn't have reacted the same. But admittedly, again, I think for all of us in the investigative side of the paranormal, it is always an adventure. Like, no matter how you draw to it. No matter if you're helping people or not helping people, or it's always an adventure. And when you collect things like that, when you start to collect lights going off when you ask them to go off, or pick up voices that aren't there or shouldn't be there, it's exciting. Like there's something happening between you and literally another realm.
Yeah.
Like if you let that sink in a moment, like that's just sci-fi beyond understanding. Like it's so cool.
Yeah, for sure. I will say that we did do a full base EMF. If you don't know what EMF, electromagnetic field, um, we did a full base around the entire house. There was high EMF in the circuit breaker box, because it was a very old circuit breaker box, and it was literally leading down to the basement where we were doing most of our investigation. High EMF can cause some issues where it'll make you think that you're having paranormal activity, but you're not. I'll let you go over what some of the symptoms are for EMF poisoning.
Yeah, for sure. So EMF poisoning could be hallucinations, could be nausea, could be paranoia, fatigue, headaches, cold-like symptoms. Things like that are typically most associated with high EMF. And the reason why we use EMF detectors isn't necessarily to try to make contact to the other side. It's literally a tool to rule out high EMF within the house, natural resources. So it's kind of like a two-in-one tool. We use it to debunk, but we also use it to try to find ghosts. But first and foremost, like it's always important to go through whatever you're investigating, do a base reading first. Because, if you go, let's say you go into someone's living room, you walk around the entire thing with this EMF detector, not a single thing goes off whatsoever for like 5 minutes that you're in there. Then later that night, you go back in there and it's going off like crazy. Chances are there's something there. Now, you still need to double check, make sure there's not a furnace on or some sort of electric outlet that's cranked up that wasn't turned on earlier, things like that. But for the most part, if you got a baseline reading that's 0 or like a 0.1 throughout, and then later you're getting these spikes all of a sudden, chances are it's not a natural source of EMF. On the flip side, if you go in and it's like, okay, here's like a 0.5, here's a 3, here's a this and that. Well, now you know that maybe using the EMF detector in that room later that day isn't reasonable. Maybe just throw it in your pocket because you know there's high EMF and it's going to mess up your evidence, basically. But yeah, like EMF, it can literally get people sick. It messes with your body. It messes with your mind. Like it's crazy. In many ways it's a drug in a sense, not in the idea that what we accumulate as drugs, but it reacts the same way. It causes the hallucinations. It makes you think things that aren't really there, and it's why we do not only preliminary base readings, but we also do preliminary interviews, Justin and I, with our clients. We will sit down with them, we'll talk to them, get an idea of what they're experiencing, why they think they're experiencing it. We will pry a little bit, as much as they're willing to give, and ask if they're on any medications, if they have any sort of psychological therapy they're going through, stuff like that. You never pry, you never force people to give you information that they don't want to give you. That's just what do you call it? Like private information. If they choose to keep it private, that's on their behalf. Right. If they don't give you that information, then it's just up to you to figure it out on the go. Like, okay, well, here's the things that we found tonight. Take what you will,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's important to do all that preliminary stuff.
Oh, for sure. And we'll get into the whole thing with a team and forums and all that stuff next week. But that does bring up a very valid point. People can be hallucinating because of mental illness, unmedicated mental illness, even documented mental illness. But something I'm going to say is a little controversial, but it's something that goes back to the cell phone thing. There are so many apps out there, and we'll go over several of them next week. But there are apps that claim that it is an EMF detector. This EMF detector as you can see, when it first starts, it'll go super
Can we do that again?
all the way to the red or yellow. But this emits so low of an EMF field that little green dot is the base with the EMF detector running. Cell phones are going to have a much higher EMF. Let's see if I can get it to react to my phone here.
I think you got to turn it on.
Yeah. So you can see how the phone is making my lights react.
That's why we suggest phones off during investigations.
Yeah.
If you're doing EMF reading.
Especially EMF reading, right? And a lot of these apps are, again, controversial. So are they going to be 100% accurate if they're doing an EMF detector in there? I'd say rely more on the external EMF detectors.
Right. Our phones have magnets inside of them. They use the geofield basically to kind of, it's how you use the compass and stuff on this as well. To your surroundings. But you do have to question, if you're using an EMF reader on your phone as an app, is it reading EMF that's around you, or is it reading the EMF that it itself is transmitting from the phone? And that's the thing that you really don't know. You can't tell. Maybe if you have, your phone as an EMF reader app plus an actual EMF reader and have them side by side and see if they're picking up on similar things, that could help determine whether or not your app is actually doing well, your phone is doing well. On the flip side, if your phone's picking things up and an actual EMF detector isn't, well, chances are your phone is probably picking up on its own EMF, and therefore it's going to skew all of your evidence. The simple fact is, cell phones, as precious and cool as they are, they just don't beat the original equipment. You just can't beat them. That's why they exist. That's why they still sell. And that's why so many paranormal investigators rely on them. We rarely ever see anyone in the TV shows using their phone. Rare occurrences, sure, but most of the time they're using some high-end product or a low-end product. Like, you don't need to spend $1,000 on investigative equipment to start investigating.
Right.
$50. You can have yourself a nice little kit, flashlight, EMF detector, EVP stuff, and you're good to go.
Yeah, I will tell you this. Price point for the recorder that I have right now was $90. Mm-hmm. There are much cheaper ones that still work just as good.
I think I bought mine for like 20. I mean, that was back in 2008, but still.
Right. Right. And this K2 meter cost me $90 to $100. I think Eric, when he first started, had one that was, I think, again, $20.
Yeah, $20 or $30 only. I still have it. That's the one. That's my go-to EMF detector. It's, you guys probably see, I forget what it's called, a ghost detector or something, or maybe that's an app. Anyway, it's just a clear plastic box with a orange top, and it has orange lights in it, and then a little meter. And all you do is push a little orange button to get it turned on, and you're good to go. It's super cheap. It's super effective. It picks up on things left and right. A lot of people, back when we first started, they wanted the K2. The K2 was like out of price range for a lot of individuals back then. Back then, they were also real pain. Nowadays, you click a button on the K2 and you're good to go. Back then,
my first
2008, you had to put a penny in there or a nickel in order to hold the button down, because it only worked when pressing the button.
Or they had one where it was more expensive. It had a switch on the side where you could just turn it on and off instead of using the button.
Yeah. Thankfully, there's a whole lot more options out there today. And because of Amazon, there are so many off brands of EMF detectors that literally you can get anything for any price these days. You do not have to go to GoStop.com to get stuff, because even though I do quite enjoy looking at their equipment, they are all very well overpriced. So Amazon is our best friend in that case.
And I will say GoStop is more expensive because they're actually, I don't know if inventing is the correct word, but they're building these pieces of equipment.
It's also branding.
Oh, that too. I think some they have invented themselves. For the most part, they're building a lot of these pieces of equipment. So we'll get a lot more into the more extensive pieces of equipment next week. IR cameras, thermal cameras, laser thermometers, regular thermometers. The list goes on and on. However, those are easily talked about in a few sentences. Like I said, I'll do some recording with my full spectrum camera, our full spectrum camera, and I have my laser thermometer, my regular thermometer, but we wanted to really educate you guys that this really can be done on a very low budget.
Mm-hmm. I got all kinds of jokes right now, but I'm just gonna let them go for now. I'm just thinking of the thermometer. Never mind.
Yeah, let's
Never
not
mind.
go there.
Just not go there. Never mind. Maybe next week.
Depends on how much Eric's had to sip on.
This has nothing to do with sipping on anything. This is a legit concern of mine regarding thermometers. Just
okay.
We'll save it for next week, though.
Yeah, we'll get into it when we're talking about thermometers. Any other simple things that well, I didn't even put it in here. Have a notebook with you, pen and paper of some kind, or if you're using your phone, type it out on your phone. I recommend pen and paper just to be taking notes. Like I mentioned, the 5 senses thing. You're not going to be able to necessarily always record that on an EVP session because you're not always going to be running an EVP session all the time. Same thing with catching it on camera. So have a notebook and a pencil or pen with you.
And when you do that, when you take your notes, make sure you write down the time that you felt whatever you felt or sensed whatever you sent, and line it up with, if you're doing EVP or something, line it up with the time code of the EVP so that later on when you're listening to your EVPs and you're like, okay, well, this happened at 6 minutes and 32 seconds. Oh, look at my notes. At 6 minutes and roughly 30 seconds, I sensed this. Well, now you got 2 things to combine to show as evidence to your client or for yourself, just for if you're doing this, like, you know, the good old graveyard investigations, which we love. It's always helpful.
Anything else on low budget you can think of?
No. Okay. And no. For a moment I thought maybe, but no, there's nothing.
I think you need to just stick with, when you're saying no, keep it in no.
I know, but then like we end the show and I'm like, oh dang, like there is something, I should have said it. And then by the time next week comes, I forget. And then I'm kicking myself for the next 2 years because like, if only on that episode at 1 hour and 18 minutes in, if I knew to just say it then, it would be hanging on my shoulder 2 years later. But yeah, no, there's nothing.
All right. But we'll also get into, you know, building a team, what that entails, what you should be doing for your clients, and stuff like that next week. But yeah, we got a lot of great stuff coming. We're barely into 2025. I'm not having as much of a hard time as Eric is this year so far.
I wouldn't even say it's necessarily me, but it's the family. So it affects me to an pretty good extent.
Right.
But yeah, rough times. But I hope everybody else is having a good 2025. And if you're not, I can literally tell you you're not alone. So good luck.
And reach out. We can absolutely talk to you guys about it if you need to.
Yeah, it'll only cost you $22.50 per hour. And
this isn't a psychic hotline.
I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. Jeez, man. Jeez.
I always
bridge so quickly. You just, man. Some people are suckers and then be like, oh, cool. The ParaTruth boys are only 22. That's a bargain compared to the normal therapist on betterhelp.com, which is $70.
Or you can call the mental health line for free too.
No, you just had to go through that. There goes all our money. Jeez.
Okay. Before I cough up along, until next week, folks, where you'll find us same time, same channel. My name is Justin.
And I'm Eric. Peace.